We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. By the time you hear this, it is Tuesday, but I'm recording this on Monday night. And joining me tonight, Howard is from Western Minnesota, small town, blue dot in a red area. Howard comes to us by way of a new hat. And I said, I said, he asked me, is it okay if I wear this? I said, we've had people do goofier shit on this show, so yeah, you're more than welcome to wear it. Howard, you got a hat. It's obviously similar to what little Liam Ramos wore on the day that he was captured and detained. I see that. I'm thinking that story may have hit home with you.
Oh yeah, Mike, you know that my grandson's around too. And when I seen him get picked up, it gets way too close to home. And this is, I go and do my protesting, and I haven't been out in a minute now, but um, this is kind of like just making a statement. I went to a nursing home the other day in Appleton and seen an old Hispanic friend of mine, and these aides that run around, they look at you and they're kind of looking weird. So I always ask them, why don't you ask me about that hat? And then I Google Liam Ramos and bring him up. It's surprising how many people don't see that stuff or don't pay no attention. And it draws on their heartstrings when you do point it out to them. And when you can bring it up on Google, they know it's for real.
Yeah, it is hard to believe that there, and it maybe explains why we're in the position we're in. People don't pay very close attention to certain things unless it happens to them directly. And I see that hat. First thing I think of is Liam. I also think of Bad Bunny because Bad Bunny did a an ad wearing a similar hat to that after Liam Ramos was taken. Um, and it's something good to do to at least remind people or inform them for the first time, whichever. Uh, this is the kind of shit we can't forget about. We can't forget about Liam Ramos, even though he's home right now. We can't forget about it because what happened to him was unthinkable.
Well, that and then how about that 2 month old baby? He'd been in there for a month and he got that bronchitis. And then they
Right.
left him and his mom off by the border and I've done some reading, and it's all over the board, but there's 400 and some at least children down there, and they have a measles outbreak in Dili, and what's that other one they got? It ain't in, is it influenza?
Yeah.
It's something that and there was just a baby born in there the other day. They brought
Uh,
the mother to the hospital and then immediately brought her back there. And there's all kinds of diseases going around in that place, and that's not the way we treat children. I just I don't understand people that can actually follow through and not put their foot down and stop that shit.
well, it is frightening. I mean, when little Liam was sick in the in detention, I thought, this is an eye opener for Trump fucks and the people with ICE that if this kid gets really sick or something happens to him, that's going to be some big trouble in this country. A lot of things may end up burning that you never imagined. And my thought was, if I'm running that detention camp or I'm Donald Trump and I know there's a sick kid that's sick there, I get him out of there as quickly as possible and get him into a hospital so we don't have that kind of blowback. But they don't seem to care about that. That doesn't worry them. You said the 2 month old that was sick. I didn't realize that they finally let him out, but the way they let him out certainly didn't make it any better for the child.
Well, that's how they found out that other disease was going around in there. It's something that connected with the flu, but it's worse because they,
Right.
they brought that baby to a hospital in Mexico. Of course, Mexico is going to take care of their children. And then it's something that's very susceptible and very contagious. And, he just had come from in there. So where did he get it? It's got
Oh
to be
yeah.
running rampant in there. They're going to be burying children down there. And I don't care if they're U.S. citizens or not. That's just not right. That's not how we treat people. Well, I guess we do it today. And then, like, and I made that deal where if I don't know if we're recording yet, but I told you I wore this to the nursing home, and these aides, they go by, they kind of smirk, and then I tell them, why don't you ask me about it? And then I bring him up on the internet, and it's like they hadn't heard about that, and but I follow stuff every day, and stuff happens so fast that I can see if you didn't follow it like you and I follow it. There's a lot of things that get lost down through the cracks that people don't even realize what's going on. It's
Well, yeah,
because we're bombarded.
something bad can happen and we can focus on it, but then something else happens and you forget about it. That's one of the strategies Donald Trump has. He can commit some kind of crime or do something that's absolutely stupid. And then a month down the road, he does something else that's stupid or criminal, and you don't even think about that. So much is coming at us. There is a lot of stuff we forget about. It's one thing if we pick out one thing that would take down Donald Trump. If you went down the list of everything he's done just since he's been in a second term, there's more than enough stuff to impeach him or send him to jail. So, you know, people aren't as focused on it as maybe you or I are, because they got a life to live. And that's the point, is that we've got to stop making what's going on at the White House and in politics the focus. They're supposed to there to be doing a job and not be the focus of attention.
Yeah, my wife says that too, that I get too involved in it. But I think about I think about my kids, and I think about my grandkids, and we won't have a country left. Donald Trump's been in what, a little over a year, and all it's like every fucking day he's doing some shit. I thought it was good when the Supreme Court ruled against him on the tariffs, and then he just goes out and does them again. If that ain't stupidity full blast, I don't know what is.
Yeah, we could talk about that in a minute.
I
I wanted
just,
to bring this. I want to bring up something you know about, because here's here's another bit of information that's kind of misleading the people of this country. Now, you went out and protest because of the surge of ICE in Minnesota. We saw it in Minneapolis. We saw it in suburbs. We saw it in outlying areas like where you've been. The amount of ICE officers going out there and some of the criminal behavior that they're doing. Tom Homan came out and said, "Okay, we're going to draw down and pull out of there." And then nobody really talked about it much. But from all I can tell, there really hasn't been a drawdown as yet. Stuff is still happening. It's just the attention on it has been diverted elsewhere. What are you hearing as somebody who was part of the protest?
well, and I haven't been down there, Mike, but I follow a few people that are down there and very involved. And
Yeah,
just the other day, last week, they counted 100 and some new vehicles. If they're
right.
drawn down, it isn't enough to show up yet. And then Tom Homan made the statement for he was going to keep some ICE agents there because they had to investigate that fraud. Well, that fraud's been fucking investigated, and people have been jailed for it. And that's not what Homeland Security and Border Patrol is for anyway.
Oh
I
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
everybody wants to say let's regulate ICE. How about if we just get rid of them and go back to Border Patrol and INS?
People are Democrats, politicians are terrified of that suggestion that we should just bring an end to ICE. And the reason they're terrified of it is because of after George Floyd, everybody said, defund the police. And that was something that was used in campaigns and elections that worked pretty well against Democrats. So they're making that comparison: defund the police or eliminate ICE. I don't think that's a good comparison at all. I don't think defund police was a smart move. ICE is a different situation, though. Ice is something that's a relatively new in the sense it came around 2000 after 9/11. Um, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have some kind of force doing what ICE does, under reasonable terms. But what they've done to ICE is such damage to it that even 5 years from now, if everything is back to normal, there's going to be something tainted about taking a job at ICE or having somebody from ICE. They're going to hate ICE agents forever. So you almost have to abolish it and come up with some other force and show people that they're properly trained and that they are expected to do decent things. You may not like the idea of abolishing ICE, but they've damaged it so far. That may be the only thing you can do.
And I agree with that. And it's all what's in the rhetoric, Mike. The Republicans are pretty good about that rhetoric, but what people don't realize how a lot of people don't realize how new ICE is. And I was going to Google that the other day, and I forgot to do that. But I was thinking it got formed in like 2005. But it doesn't matter. It hasn't been around that long. People think it's been here forever, and it's a fairly new organization. And I I think Obama deported more people than most other presidents, and he did it through Border Patrol and INS. I don't think he did it through ICE. We don't need a unregulated police force, and like you say, now it's been tainted because they have went off the fucking wall with it. They need to just disband it and go back to doing it the way they're supposed to do it by, you know, um, due process, all that. You don't have a mass police force. The only other place I've ever seen a mass police force is in Mexico, and it's because they fight the cartel. And if that in the army, they're mass too, because if the cartel gets a picture of their face, then they go after their families. That's a way of intimidation down there.
Well, if we do something different than ICE, you don't have to do anything drastic. All you have to do is form a group of people that are required to follow the Constitution. I'll give you an example. We're in a shutdown now. They're cutting off money to DHS because Republicans can't agree to terms, And if you look at the terms the Democrats have laid out, as far as due process, as far as no illegal seizures and all that stuff, all the things that the Democrats are asking for are things we're supposed to be guaranteed in the Constitution. And the Republicans are saying no to that. Regardless of what you call them or what they do, any organization, including ICE and anybody else, should be required to follow the Constitution. And that it shouldn't even be up for fucking debate.
And the Republicans aren't known for solving fucking problems anyway. What they're known for is creating problems where there aren't any problems.
Right.
And if you got to do that, you ain't very good at solving. I've never seen a Republican solve a fucking problem for me yet. So,
good at making problems. We saw that
yeah.
coming out of 2000, coming into 2008 when Obama took over, had to clean up George W. Bush's mess. 2021, Joe Biden had to clean up Donald Trump's mess. And whoever is the president after this will have to clean up Donald Trump's mess again. You're absolutely right. They don't have any plans. They don't accomplish anything. All you have to do is look at what they pass through Congress or even attempt to pass through Congress. They don't do anything but pass laws to give money to wealthy people and to be as egregious as they can against anybody that doesn't look like them. I mean, it sounds simple and it sounds like I'm being mean to them, but look at it. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah, they like to take from the poor and give to the rich, kind of like the opposite of Robin Hood there.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you get the sense that we have just as much going on in terms of ICE in Minnesota as we did prior to this announcement that they were going to draw down?
Yeah, I get that sense. I just think they've been a lot more quiet about it. And if you don't watch social media, you don't really see it on the news because as long as
Yeah.
they're not shooting anybody, the regular news is leaving them alone. That's what I see. So
Well,
I get a
that's
lot of
exactly it.
information from I get a lot of information from over by Wilmer and Litchfield and down through there, and they haven't been as active in Litchfield this week, but they've been active in Wilmer. So
Yeah, I guess with the media these days, that old axiom that says if it bleeds, it leads. The next shiny thing, something bad's got to happen before the attention is put back on something that's still happening. They're successful in tamping it down and at least making it seem better when the fact of the matter it isn't. Um, you talk about other areas. We've got this whole situation going on in Mexico right now. We've got basically the cartels going to war against the country of Mexico. They're in Puerto Vallarta bombing and shooting people and closing down airports and that sort of thing. And this all stems from um, Mexico killing one of the top heads of the cartels. So they're looking for retribution. It's not something that's going to last a long time, but it really threw people into um, into a mess and people terrified, people being stuck down there. And I think people should take notice of this. Donald Trump is the one that wanted to go down there and bomb cartels and such. If you don't think there's going to be some retribution for Americans, especially to be messing around in there, you're fucking crazy. You're going to get a lot of innocent people killed because that's what cartels will do.
yeah, I've been following that a little bit. From what I see, Mike, I got a little different opinions than a lot of people, but as far as the car, and they're doing a lot of burning, a lot of, it's a lot of actually it hits on civilians, as far as
Right.
cost, money. And I, I think that's as far as the cartel goes, I think that's a big mistake for them because there's now there's going to be have to be pretty strong retribution by the government or the cartel's going to have to try to take over the government, one of the two, or it's going to
Right.
it's just and then when you start hitting that civilian with all them losses, because I don't know how they can gain the recovery of all them burnt vehicles that got burnt, if there's any way of doing that, or you piss off the civilians, you're as good as caught because they see everything that you do and every place you go, and you just if you got all the civilians mad, there ain't no place to hide, you know. And I spent time down there, Mike. We used to run an orphanage down there, believe it or not, and I'll tell you a couple stories real quick. We were coming back into New Level Laredo one night, and there was a big traffic jam. And here was the army, and here were a couple pickups, and the pickups were all shot out, and the guys were hanging. They were, hanging out the windows. They were bleeding. They were dead, of course. Anyway, next morning, get up and they get a newspaper, and here that's on the front page of the paper. And anytime they, like if the army or whatever, the federales would get a big drug bust and they'd shoot somebody up, they'd have them dead people sitting there with all that marijuana or well, it wasn't so much marijuana anymore, but it wasn't fentanyl quite yet then either, but all
Cocaine.
crack or yeah, cocaine, and what's that other one that people get hooked on? Meth, meth.
Yeah.
You know, um, I think when they need to be, their army and their federales are awful, awful good at what they do. I know I took my wife down there one time. We had to replace this refrigerator, so we stayed at this motel, and I bet there were 150 federale pickups there. And when they got in them pickups, there'd be about six to a pickup because there'd be two in the front seat and then there'd be four in the back. And they got them pickups set up where they could stand up in them and hold themselves. And then they got, automatic rifles. And then, and that one more quick one, then we'll go on. But I used to spend my winters down there, and then I'd work and fix things in this orphanage. Well, I had this place I stayed, and I'd walk to a lot of places I'd go, because that's how you meet the people and you're in amongst them. But I had this place that they got these little roadside stands all over it. A lot of times they'd be out in front of their houses. So this one family I got to know pretty good. And here I'm walking down to get something to eat, and all of a sudden, here come the army, and then, and they pull over and they surround me, Mike. And I've been through a lot of shit in my day, but that's the only time I've been surrounded by a foreign army, and that was in Mexico. And I just kept on walking, and I got to the edge of that circle where I was going to go through, and they opened up and they let me through, and they closed back up. What they did as I was walking besides the semi truck that was parked there, within 2 minutes they had that semi truck opened up and they were going through it. I just happened to be walking next to it when they descended down onto it. But that was a scary feeling when they surrounded me.
So were they trying to make sure that you weren't part of the whatever scam was
No,
going
no,
on?
it was just all in the timing. I was walking by and they were pulling up at the same time, and I just kept walking, and they'd formed a circle. And then when I got to them, they just opened up and I walked through and they closed back up. And then they went about what they were going to do with this semi. It was just a
Yeah.
matter of, it's fucked up timing.
The thing about Mexico, I haven't been to Mexico for many years, but Mexico counts on tourism. Mexico counts on a lot of American income. I know people that have homes down there. Um, I knew, but there's a lot of corruption too. I knew one couple who had a home down in Mexico, and they ended up selling it and getting out of there because they found that some people would be in their nice homes on a beach or something like that, and the government would come in and say, "You can't live here anymore. Get the fuck out. Keep the house. Keep the money," and you were just done. And they were worried about losing their home and all their money, so they just got out of there. But then when you couple that with the cartels, how how much do you think cartels really affect tourists down there? I mean, the presence is obviously concerning, but do the cartels really mess with tourists down there much, or do they just mess with everybody, or just the government?
Well, I don't think they really mess with tourists or go into the tourist spot until this happened. But now there are places that I went, Mike, that, regular tourists wouldn't go. Down
Right.
where that orphanage is located at, it's right along the Rio Grande River. And it's one of the places they do their crossing. And there'd be two, three, 14-year-old, 13, 14-year-old kids down there, and they got them automatic machine guns, and they're watching their shit until they get ready to cross it. And you just got to drive by them like we used to drive by them on the road before we'd pull into that orphanage. But as long, they knew what we were there for, and we never screwed with them. So I never had no problems with them. But it's an intimidating thing to have to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, they don't screw with you, but when you intimidation, because they're loaded for bear. If you see them, they're loaded for bear. So
Yeah. I mean, I don't suppose they're looking for trouble for nothing, but
no.
they're kind of like a mafia or organized crime in the sense that if you come after them or you kill one of their leaders, they're going to send a message. And I think that's kind of what they were doing down in Mexico now. You fucking killed our boss. Now we're going to wreak havoc on your communities so that you think twice before doing it again.
And I think is that could backfire on them just because you piss the people. You always got to remember the regular people have to live there no matter
Right.
what. And if they don't feel safe where they live, sooner or later they'll make it safe, you know.
They either get out or
So
fight back. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yes.
One of the
So
things, talking about safety, one of the things we're kind of waiting with bated breath on is Donald Trump going to bomb Iran or is he not going to bomb Iran? And this is typical of Donald Trump. Donald Trump likes playing this position where he's trying to intimidate somebody and you don't know what's going to happen. He loves people being in that position, and that's where we're at now. What's your gut reaction as to whether or not Donald Trump will drop bombs or put on a full attack on Iran?
I don't know. I really, in a way, I think he will. But then on the other hand, they call it the taco for a reason. Here's the part that
Right.
I don't understand, Mike, is, they came out and they said if he attacks Greenland, we'll impeach him. But they ain't said a word about Iran. I get Iran's not was never one of our allies. I get that. But how come they're not making that threat when he's threatening to go to in the fucking Iran? He's got all that naval power over there, and it's scary. Why do we want to fuck around in that part of the world?
Yeah, unless we absolutely have to. There's nothing really going on. This is the one thing I've said about Donald Trump. I said on a TikTok that Donald Trump has Munchausen's by proxy. That's where generally a woman would make their kids sick so they could heal them and make them healthy again so they could be a hero. And that's what Donald Trump does. He constantly creates problems where there isn't a problem and then tries to save the day. The only difference between Donald Trump and these women with Munchausen's by proxy, he doesn't save the day because he fucks it up every time. I mean, they're talking about going to war with Iran because they want a nuclear deal. Well, they had a nuclear deal until Donald Trump got rid of it. So it was all the point of this was all to get rid of it, create the problem, and then Donald Trump could save the day. Yet here we are, maybe minutes away from Iran being bombed. It's yet another fuck up by Donald Trump.
Yeah, and then you wonder if it's diversion from the Epstein files. I call them the Donald Trump files because Donald Trump's, I think, in there probably more than Jeffrey Epstein, because
Probably.
it's split up between him and Ghislaine Maxwell, So, but anyway, and you wonder how it could, be so bad that you do that. But, you see some TikToks and you can go in there and read them about, that they may have been killing children in there. So anything they can do at this point to divert. And yeah. Do you think Iran's part of that? The reason of that?
Well, that's something somebody has said. First of all, I think part of the reason he wants to go into Iran is because somehow Israel is putting pressure on him to do that. There's no reason for America to get involved with this, but we know Israel definitely wants Iran bombed. And either Donald Trump is such a good buddy of Benjamin Netanyahu that he's willing to bomb this country on behalf of Israel, or Benjamin Netanyahu has something holding over his head, pushing him into that situation. And since we know that Jeffrey Epstein had some ties with Israel, who the fuck knows? Maybe Benjamin Netanyahu does have some evidence. Maybe he has the whole files because that's what maybe Jeffrey Epstein was selling. One thing we hear, everybody says Jeffrey Epstein was a asset of Israel, an asset of Russia. Then I heard somebody make a point that makes the most sense. Jeffrey Epstein gathered a lot of evidence against important people, people in government, and he wasn't really an asset for any one country. He was an asset for the highest bidder. And I think he probably sold a lot of things to a lot of countries like Israel, Russia, whoever the hell's wanted it. And who knows where evidence is lying around at this point. And the idea that Benjamin Netanyahu may have some, not crazy.
And you made a TikTok about that, and then that Iran may have some of the evidence too. He could be, fucked either way.
Well, that's
So,
yeah.
right.
Somebody made that suggestion, and again, it sounds like a conspiracy theory. But look at how Donald Trump has handled top secret information. There is really no national security in this country anymore, so anybody could have anything. And what they supposed was Israel has some evidence. You go bomb Iran, or we're going to release the evidence. But then Iran comes out and says, well, "We got some evidence. You bomb us, and then we're going to uh, release the evidence." So Donald Trump, clearly, it's possible with Donald Trump because he's a dumb motherfucker. He could find himself between a rock and a hard place, meaning whichever way he goes, he's going to get exposed. If any of that is true, and I don't know that it is true, but as crazy as it sounds, I can't say it's impossible.
Well, what I don't like is we're not stepping up to the plate because it wouldn't be a problem of he being exposed if we already had him exposed. You know what I'm saying? We're doing nothing to prosecute anybody in the Trump files. Maybe like over in the UK they arrested the former Prince Andrew, right? Maybe they're
Right.
going to come in through the back door because I think whatever evidence that they get any place in the world is gonna somehow lead back to our president because I don't think they were friends. I think they were cohorts, and I think Trump was in charge of a lot more than what they give him credit for, and I think he's been involved in selling information to Russia for fucking 20 years anyway. If you want to
Yeah.
really go back.
Yeah. I do too. People will scoff at the idea that Donald Trump might have been a business partner of Jeffrey Epstein, but let's think about it. Uh, he had all those pageants of these young girls. He had young girls working at Mar-a-Lago, some of them that ended up with Jeffrey Epstein. He may have been a partner. He may have been a supplier. He may have been a lot of things. We know that Donald Trump has been involved in money laundering with Russia through Deutsche Bank. This could have been a big money laundering operation amongst any other number of businesses. But the fact of the matter is we know that there were $1.5 billion at the end that they can track. And with that kind of money, you can bet there's a lot of people with their hands in the honey pot, as it were, including Donald.
And if they've tracked that much money already, what if they actually really investigated the Trump files? I and just go back to how come they haven't released them other 3 million? The stuff they've been finding on this 3 million, they think they're not releasing the other 3 million because it's even worse.
Yeah, no
it
doubt.
I would have a hard time imagining how it could be worse. But when you're dealing with Donald Trump, every day it's fucking worse, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's got to be embarrassing for the DOJ. Maybe not because they don't care. But you mentioned the UK. We've got Prince Andrew arrested. We've got that. We got a guy in England that basically is Howard Lutnick's counterpart, same kind of guy except for the UK, who was fired first, and yesterday he was arrested. There's a lot of shit going on in and in both those cases. It wasn't so much about the abuse of young women; it was about misbehavior and misappropriating information and that sort of thing for the government. And you can be assured that there's the same things going on over here. I think that's part of the reasons why they aren't doing the investigations here. It's one thing about the abuse of young girls, but there's a lot of other crimes against this country in the process. All these people talking, all these people complicit in their little secrets, maybe trading ideas. Donald Trump is not opposed to giving away information. Fuck, he does it as president. So I think there's a lot of levels to what's going on with the Epstein files. And they may be more afraid of that because that's going to be a little harder for them to distract from there's just too much shit there, and Donald Trump knows it's there. I think I've said all along we aren't going to see most of the files or any of the files until Donald Trump is no longer in power for whatever hold he has on people to keep this hidden. It seems to be in place as long as he's alive. But when he's gone, I think we're going to see an avalanche of information coming out that nobody else can stop except Donald Trump. And when it does come out, it's going to be devastating to Donald Trump's legacy and a lot of other motherfuckers in this country and outside this country that were part of this.
And here's something we got to think about. They arrested that former Prince Andrew, and like you said, they're investigating him for secrets, information that he shared and that he wasn't
Right.
supposed to share. And he was also shown with pictures of Wayne with them young girls, that one
Right.
that was kind of looked passed out. And they're not even talking about that. They're talking about the information he shared. And that, if you think about that, that does sound awful familiar to our president because, the first day of his first term, he had two Russian assets in the fucking White House. And they passed that off as, well, he didn't fucking know any better. Well, I tell you what, I wouldn't even know a Russian asset, much
No.
less invite him to the White House. And then when he left his presidency from his first term, how many files did he leave with? What was he doing with them files? He's been selling information for fucking years. And like there's a lot of states out here in that state next to us, South Dakota, that we don't think too much about. But I bet on their books, if you get caught cattle rustling, you still get hung. Well, probably on the books, if you get accused as a traitor, you probably still can get hung in this country too. And that's what Donald Trump would be, is a fucking traitor.
It's interesting. You mentioned, and I've talked about this before, you mentioned the two Russian assets or spies that met with Donald Trump in the early part of his first term, met in the Oval Office alone with no outside people. And he inadvertently, and I say that with not a lot of confidence in it, but he gave away some top secret information. But do you remember what that information was? It's kind of interesting now when you look at it in retrospect. It was military information, top secret military information from Israel. That's what he gave away. So you got Russia, you got them getting information from Israel. He goes, whoops, I'm new at this. I didn't know any better. I doubt that's the case. I mean, even put it this way, these two Russian spies that met Donald Trump, this isn't the first time they met. Donald Trump known these people for a long fucking time. So there's more to that whole situation than the Republicans or Donald Trump has let on. And that's the disgusting thing. There's a lot of incestuous stuff going on between governments, Russia, Israel, United States, and plenty of other places that they're having relationships with. The world at large is kind of a dirty, trashy place now because of all these people that are willing to give up whatever just for a pocket full of gold.
And I like the point that you brought up too, because I just, a lot of, I don't know if people don't think about this or not. I do. It's kind of like, yeah, how well did he know them Russian spies for them to show? I heard it was his first day in office, but let's say it's his first
It could
week.
be.
For them to show up and expect to see him in his office, they had to have a hell of a relationship between them three. Because you just don't show up at the White House and expect to be seen.
Put it this way, if somebody came knocking on my door that I didn't know, me in my little condo, if they came knock, I wouldn't sit down and talk to them if I don't know them. Yeah, I'm going to need to get to know you a little bit, let alone being the president of the United States who has all kinds of security.
Exactly. So I'm just like you say, people got to think about how long that relationship had been going on for them guys to show up there and get that kind of access.
Well, in the
So,
Epstein files, we're finding out right now there's things in the Epstein files that implicate Donald Trump, directly and completely implicate Donald Trump. We're also hearing that now the DOJ is starting to try to take down some of these things that they released that people already have access to. But there's a situation that we've heard for years about the lawsuit against Donald Trump and his co-defendant Jeffrey Epstein regarding the rape of a 13-year-old child. And when you read that account, it's not just he touched some girl. I mean, in this account, he talks about forcing this girl to be involved in or perform oral pleasures, if you will. Then Donald Trump getting mad and literally punching this girl in the head 4 times, and then threatening them that if you do talk about it, you're going to disappear. Now, if that isn't enough to cause an investigation, whether we can believe the girl or the woman now that's saying it, it warrants an investigation. And that's a troubling thing. There's a lot of things like with Donald, with other men. And in spite of all these investigations we see in other countries, there's not been one investigation, zero investigations. And that's what people should find troubling. Somebody makes a claim or an accusation, it should at least be looked into. And none of these situations have been looked into at all.
um, then yeah, Pam Bondi made the statement that there wasn't anything to investigate, and I thought Cass Patel kind of made the statement too, and I guess if that statement is made and one other person gets convicted, that automatically puts them in contempt. They need to have charges. They're talking about we need to impeach Pam Bondi. Well, we need to impeach her and bring her up on charges and put her in jail, just like they did with um, that. Who was the one that Nixon had? He got jailed too.
John Mitchell, yeah, he
John
did for
Mitchell,
doing a lot less than Pam Bondi did.
yeah,
Well, and in terms of perjury, she's committed it at least twice, where she said, and that was illustrated when we had the hearing with Pam Bondi. She said, "Yeah, we want to talk to all the survivors, and we'll listen to them and use that evidence and whatever." And then they had, I think Dan Goldman had the survivors stand up, and they all said, "We've all reached out. They won't talk to us. They dismiss us. They dissuade us. They ignore us." So that right there was perjury. And then when Pam Bondi said that there is nothing left to investigate, that was clearly a lie, because we're seeing all these things that should have been investigated and they refused to do it. That's why I say Pam Bondi, um, John Mitchell has nothing on Pam Bondi. What he did was a cover up, a minor cover up. What she's doing is maybe the largest cover up in the history of this country. She, without question, will get investigated when we have Democrats in the DOJ. She will likely be prosecuted, and she's got an excellent chance of getting convicted. And you can tell she's nervous about it, because when she was at that meeting and somebody suggested she committed perjury, oh, she got all indignant and kind of red and kind of sweating. How dare you accuse me of committing a crime? How is that crazy if we just watched you fucking commit the crime, for fuck's sake?
yeah. She acts like we're all stupid, but I think she feels. I At first I think she felt like she was immune to getting in trouble. But like you say, she looks awful nervous now when she makes some of them stupid statements she makes. I think it's the nerves getting the best of her, because I think she's actually realizing there is going to be a jail term at the end of her term here.
The only way she doesn't get prosecuted, or Kash Patel doesn't get prosecuted, or Hegseth doesn't get prosecuted, the only way that happens is if Donald Trump lives forever and stays in power forever. And you and I both know that's not going to happen. We don't know that he can survive till tomorrow with his health mentally and physically. And there's no way he's going to be reelected again because he can't run for a third term, regardless of what bullshit he says. Um, they're seeing now the diminishment of Donald Trump, and they realize they're on the downside of their careers. And when he's gone, they can't protect themselves anymore because JD Vance isn't going to, the Republicans aren't going to. There's going to be a sigh of relief when Donald Trump dies because all these cowardly motherfuckers will stand up and say, "Yeah, I didn't like Donald Trump either," because they got no fucking courage. But there's going to be no protection when he's done.
Um, Pam Bondi's cover up goes all the way back to where she worked for the state of Florida as the AG. And you
Yeah,
go, when Donald Trump dies, there's going to be a sigh of relief. Well, I think that sigh is going to be loud enough to be heard around the world. Like, it's going to be an awful goddamn loud sigh when they announce his death. I think it's going to be more like cheering and singing and dancing in the streets.
it's it's gonna, when he dies, I've said it's going to be like a worldwide Mardi Gras. I mean, it's going to be joyous all over the country. I hope it's not another opportunity for Shia LaBeouf to get in fucking trouble because he didn't do well in the real Mardi Gras. He got arrested, got in a fight, but it's going to get crazy, and all the Republicans are going to be taken aback by. You think they were upset about us not feeling bad enough about Charlie Kirk? Fuck, when their Lord and Savior is done, they're going to be appalled by how happy everybody is. I've said before, when he dies, I'm contemplating doing TikToks and just sitting there like this and playing the song "Celebrate" by Kool and the Gang. Celebrate good times. There's a party going on, and they're going to be taken aback. Now, this is airing on Tuesday. We're doing it Monday night, but it's airing on Tuesday. Got a big event coming up tonight. Donald Trump is going to do his State of the Union, and that promises to be fucking crazy if everything goes as planned. I wouldn't sit and watch the State of the Union, but I may do it tonight. Donald Trump's going to stand up there and tell us how great the economy is, how great he's doing, how great tariffs are, which is all lies, of course. We understand that a number of Democrats are going to boycott. So this is going to piss him off because he's going to see it as disrespect that we've got these open seats, that he didn't have the biggest crowd. And then secondly, or thirdly, they're talking about filling some of those empty seats with Jeffrey Epstein's, some Jeffrey Epstein survivors. They
Survivors,
just
yeah.
Then you just throw into the mix, it's going to be about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, just when sundowners are starting to set in. This could be a fucking crazy event. This may be one of the hottest tickets to watch on television that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, and then I've heard your theory, or maybe it's other people that he may bomb Iran just to get out of having the State of the Union address. But if he goes through with it, I'm definitely going to watch it because all them things that you mentioned about him sundowning and shit, and then the other thing shit's not going his way. He's losing so many court cases that and one of them is like the tariff. I
Right.
think if he gets wound up and gets started on a rant, they're almost going to have to remove him off that stage because he's going to feel that's his stage.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, he could really look nuts up there.
What people have to understand
Go
is
ahead.
Donald Trump will never let go of a loss. He will never admit he's lost. And the way I can best exemplify that is the 2020 election. We're 6 years away from the election in 2020. He lost that election, and he refuses to admit he lost. So much so that he goes into Georgia and grabs all the ballots from 2020. And we're in 2026. What's the point? It's going to be a similar situation with this loss in the Supreme Court with the tariffs. He's never going to admit that he lost. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasurer, stood up right after that decision was handed down and literally said, they didn't find against Donald Trump. Donald Trump won that one. Well, for fuck's sake, we know you're smarter than that. You're just such a fucking pussy ass bitch that you'll say anything to keep Donald Trump happy and try to avoid saying anything that will make him mad. But Donald Trump doesn't like the fact that he lost. And the thing I thought was emblematic of him being a fucking child, they say you can't do tariffs. You can't do tariffs. So Donald Trump can't say, oh, better luck next time. We'll win next time. He doesn't do that. His response, his doubling down, his tripling down is, well, then we're going to put up more tariffs. No, bitch, they just told you can't do tariffs. But now he's going to try to work some other angle. And instead of just saying we're going to keep doing them this way, he has to double or triple down on it by saying, now we're just going to do global tariffs, 10%. And when that didn't hit hard enough, he said 15%. And then he started a whole other fucking disaster. But didn't you find it funny that his only comeback about not being allowed to do tariffs was to try to impose more fucking tariffs? It's fucking childish.
Yeah, it's like the attitude is I'm going to show them, you know.
Yeah. I'm going to show them
That's
I'm
all
right, you're
ego
wrong.
there. Yeah, that's all ego there. And he's supposed to be representing the United States of America. He's representing Donald Trump and Donald Trump's fucked up ideas. That's who
Right.
he's representing.
Well, did you see what he did
So,
yesterday after he told everybody, they said I can't do tariffs, so I'm going to do a bunch more tariffs. Then he got the blowback from the other side. All these countries, UK and all these places that were alleged to have deals with Donald Trump said, well, look, if those tariffs aren't legal, then we don't really have an agreement. Everything's fucking changed. Why do we have to give you an agreement if you're not legally allowed to have tariffs? So Donald Trump says, if you don't stick to the letter of those deals, then I'm going to raise the tariffs. Again, dude, they just told you you can't do tariffs. That's not the argument you want to give. But that's how stupid and silly this motherfucker is. He can't admit that he's wrong and that they're going to take this opportunity away from him. He thinks there's some angle, some way that he'll still be able to do it, and there's just not. And these people around the world and these other countries are getting tired of being having their feet held to the fire by Donald Trump. The moment they can shove it back in his face, they're going to fucking do it.
oh yeah, and I think they're kind of to the point where they're enjoying doing it now. And I
Yeah.
think the rest of the world, they know he's nuts. Donald Trump is nuts at this point, and I think they're gonna rub his face in his own shit politics every chance they get at this point because they're so tired, and the rest of the world is so tired of Donald Trump wanting to control everything on the world stage. You know,
Where Donald Trump's fatal flaw is the same that every bully has, that I'm the biggest gorilla in the room. Everybody's afraid to me. All I have to do is raise my hackles and people will cower at my strength and do whatever I tell them. But that's proven not to be true. And Donald Trump isn't self aware enough to recognize that. You know, he thinks he can go into Europe or other foreign countries and say, if you don't do this, we're going to do this. So just bend to my will. Same way he ran his business, same way he was in school, all the same bullying tactics. But the problem is, I don't know if he doesn't understand it or he doesn't believe that people will do it against him. But Europe has plenty of options, and other countries have plenty of options to shove it down Donald Trump's throat. They're they're talking about just cutting off all deals and not dealing with America at all. Well, that would hurt them certainly, but it would devastate the United States if nobody dealt with us. We've got the treasury bonds they could sell, and they've already started selling them. They could bankrupt this country if they sold all the treasury bonds. And then you've got all these military bases in European countries. They could shut those motherfuckers down. If anybody thinks Europe doesn't have any power over the United States or Donald Trump, they're fucking kidding themselves, because Donald Trump could end up destroying this country by way of pissing off the wrong people.
Yeah, and the other thing that people don't think about enough is once he ruins them markets, we can go back to what he did to the farmers with their beans. Now
Right,
China is already buying them from different countries.
right.
What's their initiative to ever buy them from us again, except if we lower to the price to the point where they can't refuse? Well, for us to do that, our government's going to have to subsidize them beans. So it comes back to us taxpayers again. You know, it's just once you break them supply lines, and who's to say they'll ever buy anything from us again? They
Well,
could like lock us out. Yeah.
a good example is you owned a lawn and landscaping service, right?
Yeah, tree service. Yep.
Okay. And say, let's just say you buy fertilizer, and a store sells you the fertilizer, but they do something to piss you off. So you find someplace else to buy fertilizer. And you do that, and everybody goes, holy shit, they're buying it someplace else. Okay, we'll be nice now. We'll give you everything you want. Do you go back to them? No, because you can't trust them. You can't trust
No.
that they're going to be true to their word. Uh, and that's going to be the same with what we've got here. Nobody's going to trust the United States until Donald Trump is gone. And even after that, they may not. So he's doing significant damage to the market. Um, and even if it can be repaired, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of glad handing to get people back trusting us, because they can't trust Donald Trump. And, and in essence, they can't trust the United States um, to not vote for a dumb fuck again, and justifiably so.
Exactly. And that's what I'd agree with. Just removing Donald Trump is only going to solve part of that problem because we have lost the world's trust. And we're going to have to earn that back. He's going to do a lot more damage that's going to follow for a lot longer than he'll be in office. It's going to have effects for years and big
Yeah,
financial effects too.
yeah. Donald Trump's dying isn't going to fix anything. The only thing it allows us to do is to start to do the process to heal and to fix things. And even still, if we want to get trade back from Canada or that sort of thing, um, we're going to have to give a little bit. So that means whatever we're selling, we're going to make less on it than we would have prior to Donald Trump, just to try to get people's confidence back. The damage Donald Trump has done to this country for today and for the next decade is significant. And I think people will start realizing that, especially the farmers. They keep thinking Donald Trump's going to come through for them. He talks about this $12 billion bailout. How about you just let them do their jobs and make their own money as opposed to bail them out? But the fact of the matter is that bailout was weak at best. They needed 40 to $50 billion to stay whole, and they got them 12, and I don't even know if they got them that yet. So there's a lot of people that are going to die on the vine, people that are going to lose farms. There's a lot of people suffering right now, and they aren't taking it too well. And you see it by way of the way the polls are looking right now. His polls are the worst polls any president had in history. In history, he's the worst polling president in history. And why that doesn't click home to some Republicans at this point, do not get it. You can't be that terrified of this fucking goofball.
Here we go talking about polls. I'd like to bring that up because we had them polls before the presidential election, and they didn't seem to mean a lot. And I always hear these polls now that Trump's negative in this, and negative in that, negative, and But then I go out here and I walk in this red world that I live in out here, and I don't see support really waning.
Okay.
And then the other thing is, and I hate to admit this, I got a friend of mine, and she sent me fucking videos about when the Supreme Court ruled on the tariffs. Oh, they're he's trying to save us. He's trying to do this, and now they're tying his hands. After all this bullshit, they still can't see that he's a stupid motherfucker.
Well,
It gets irritating.
and the thing about
So
it is we've talked about polls before, and prior to the election, I've always said you can't trust polls, and I will still say you can't trust polls. The only thing the polls mean to me at this point, I don't know if they're accurate or not, but because they're negative of Donald Trump, we know it's fucking with the Republicans' heads because they will buy into it. I don't buy into it. I mean, I logic would tell you that with what's going on with the economy and the deportations and all the egregious shit, that naturally his popularity would go down. I don't know if those polls properly reflect it. I don't know that I trust any polls, but I know that there are Republicans that do trust it. And if that's the message it's sending, I'm good enough with that. I just want these people to be locked in failure every time they turn around.
Well, what scares me, Mike, too, and I never really followed politics until this stupid fucker ran for president the first time. But
Right.
from the feeling that I get out here is we're not gonna, people aren't gonna change from Republican to being Democrat. They're just gonna stay home. They're not gonna vote.
Right.
you know so what scares me is that stupidity goes into hibernation until the next candidate that they get stuck on you know
Well, isn't that what
how
happens
can
anyway?
we hi
Isn't that what happens anyway? I've said that a lot, and you know, we can talk about um, racism. And now you're married to a woman of color, and I'd be curious. There was a period of time, like say the '90s to the 2000s, when white people, pasty white motherfuckers like us, would say, "God, racism has really gotten better. It's going away. We're getting better in this country," and it's my contention, and I bet your wife would agree because she sees it from a different perspective than we do. I don't think racism is any better now or any worse than it was in the 60s or the 50s. And in the 90s and 2000s, when we thought it got better, I think racism was just as bad. Uh, but I think these people, like Trumplafucks, were concerned about being shamed for their opinions and what they say out loud. So they hid under their rocks for a period of time. So that racism was always there. That dumb Trumplafuckism was always there. It wasn't until Donald Trump stepped up and made it cool to be racist or to be a dumb fucked again. I don't know that we can ever fix racism or some of the authoritarianism or the fascism we have in this country. All we can do is shame them enough and scare them enough that they go under the cover of darkness, and we can keep them there as long as we can keep them at bay. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you're right. I don't think racism has ever gotten any less. There for a while it was buried better, and it was like you say, they get shamed if they showed it, and Donald Trump has made it cool again.
Right.
Because and I run into that, Mike, and I just look at people and I tell them just straight up, racism isn't cool, and then I just walk away because I've gotten to the point that I know I'm not going to change their mind, but I'm not
Right.
gonna. I'm gonna let them know exactly how I think. You know.
Oh
If
yeah,
they,
absolutely.
if yeah, because if they can let me know how they think, I can let them know. It just ain't cool.
Well, you've got to see it from a different perspective. If you live in Minneapolis and you're married to a black man or a black woman and you happen to be white, um, you're probably not going to get any side eyes or too many comments in Minneapolis. But you live in rural Minnesota, deep red area, and you live in that area, and you got pasty white Howard and his wife, a woman of color. At the very least, you've got to get some odd looks now and again.
Well, Mike, it's probably not as bad out here as what you might think, but I grew up here and they think I'm fucking nuts anyway. I'm not saying it don't go on behind my back, but I don't think there's ballsy enough people. A lot of racist people ain't ballsy enough to try to push somebody that they don't think can be pushed, if that makes any sense.
So what you're saying is because they know who you are, and
Yeah.
you have some standing in the community, and they don't know what you would do, they're less likely to come at you. But if a young couple that they didn't know, that's say a millennial, and they're walking down the streets of whatever town you live in, and they don't know them, and they appear as though that they could get away with it, they'd be more apt to say or do some shit.
A whole lot more apt. Yep. Yep. And I don't know if I got any standing, but they think I'm half nuts anyway, and that's what scares them. So we just go with that.
Well, that's what I've always said about bullies. Bullies will only go after weak people if they even think there's a hint of a chance that you're going to fight back. They'll avoid you because they're not about fighting. They're about uh, scaring people into submission. That's why when people talk about being on TikTok, and you get a lot of creators that say, "Oh, they're come after me because of this, and they're making threats against me." I never get threats. I never get that much shit, and I think it has a lot to do with me being able to say, "You don't scare me, motherfucker," and now I'm going to come for you. And I have some options with the number of followers and stuff. I could expose them. I could do a lot of different things. But because I pose a potential pushback, they're less apt to come after me. And it sounds like that's your situation where you live.
Yeah. Yeah. They know I would push back and it'd come very quickly. So I don't get the hassle that probably somebody else would get.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Um, on Thursday, they're hearing this on Tuesday. So in 2 days, we're going to have the first of two um, hearings regarding the Epstein files, which is ironic because the Republicans don't want to talk about the Epstein files, but they got Hillary Clinton and on Thursday, Bill Clinton on Friday, and they're going to do some behind the doors testimony with Hillary Clinton. The point of this was to distract away from Donald Trump, which it won't do, and to maybe try to shame the Clintons. I see this as an incredible disaster for the Republicans, especially when it comes to Hillary Clinton. She's not in the files. She's not accused of doing anything on Epstein's Island or anything like that. But she is a very sharp lawyer, very sharp politician, and she's pissed off right now. She's ready to fucking go. Uh, as soon as they sit down, somebody ought to say, "You ought to be careful what you ask for, because now you're gonna fucking get it." I'm convinced she's going to control that whole fucking thing, and Donald Trump is going to be coming out of her mouth every 10 seconds.
I want to just do a little history here. Now, I always thought the Clintons were dirty, but I loved
Yeah,
Bill as a president. And Hillary, you fucking right, she's smart. And when I heard that she was going to go in and testify about these Trump files, I call them the Trump files. I think back to when Trump was running the first time, and him and Hillary were on stage, and he starts chanting, "Jail her, jail Hillary, jail Hillary." Do you think? Now you got to remember, she's a female. Do you think she's ever forgotten that? I
No.
think this is the stupidest fucking thing the Republicans can do because if Hillary's got any evidence on Trump and she can get it out when they're questioning her, she's going to get it out there. And she's a very smart woman. I think they're going to really regret this. And I don't think Bill will even have to come on the next day because they're going to be fucking running in circles after Hillary gets done with them.
Well, yeah, yeah, and when they agreed to do it, they seemed to agree to do it pretty fast. And if I was a Republican, I would
Yeah.
say, why did they agree so fast? We had to think about this a little bit. And the thing about Hillary Clinton too, she's got many things that Bill Clinton doesn't have. Or at least it would, Bill's kind of I think if Bill does talk, one of two things will happen. He'll carry off what Hillary did to them and just keep shoving that down their throat, or he'll go Les Wexner and just say, I don't know nothing about nothing. I didn't do that. I knew him beforehand and all that other shit. So I'm not worried about Bill Clinton. But what Hillary has that Bill Clinton doesn't have, a couple things. First of all, she has a fucking mean streak. She won't fuck around. She's ready to go. Secondly, she has absolutely nothing to fucking lose. I mean, if after this is done, people say Bill Clinton's nothing more than a piece of shit, she'll be thinking in her mind, yeah, see, I fucking told you. She's got nothing to lose. They got nothing on her. So they're going to give her a platform. And what's going to happen too, she's going to give the testimony. And after, she's going to be on every news station there is telling whatever the hell Republicans refuse to tell. They're opening up a Pandora's box here, and it's fucking dumb.
Oh, they're going to regret this one. Hillary Clinton, I don't care what you say about her. She's a very smart woman. And this is her day because she's
Yeah.
never forgotten that day on stage where Trump kept saying, jail Hillary, jail Hillary. This is her. I really feel this is Hillary's payback day. And, I'm going to be a Hillary supporter when they're interviewing her because she's gonna take them wherever she wants to take them. They're not gonna lead her down the road there. I guarantee you that.
Well, people have to remember they sat her in
11 hours.
testimony 11 hours with Benghazi and they thought they had her cold. They came out of it with fucking nothing. And Hillary wreaked havoc. This is her last shot. She's 80 years old or thereabouts. She's not running for anything. She's got absolutely nothing to lose. And she hates Donald Trump. And what people have to remember is when he got elected, she made several predictions of all the bad things Donald Trump will do. She's been 100% right on every one of
Yep.
those things. So she's got an axe to grind. And I would think that Donald Trump is a little nervous about Hillary stepping up because she's got nothing to lose. Donald Trump's got everything to lose.
Well, and then you got to realize how fucking stupid the Republicans are because it's gonna explode. It's gonna backfire on them, and they're the ones that are giving her the platform to do it with.
Yeah.
They're not smart enough to see that.
You go through every
So no,
Republican
this is
in that
going to be
House,
interesting.
you go through every House Republican in the Oversight Committee. She's smarter than every one of them. You think Jim Jordan's going to tie her up? You think James Comer's going to fucking tear her down? No fucking way. No, they got stuff to lose. They've got limitations. Hillary's got nothing. Now, I'll agree with you. I never liked the Clintons much. I thought they were dirty. I kind of wished Hillary would have won over Donald Trump, but she wasn't
Yeah.
my favorite. I did vote for her, but she wasn't my favorite. Um, but now at this point, we don't have to worry about her running for president. We just need an ass kicker out there. and she's an appropriate choice to kick some ass because she's kind of like me in doing TikToks. You can't call my boss. You can't call my family. You can't shut me up because you can't shame me. And she's in that same position. You can't fucking touch her no matter what you do. What are you going to do that you haven't already tried and failed at?
She lived through the Monica Lewinsky whole ordeal. She'll live through this one too. And like you say, she's 80 years old. She's got nothing to lose. I can't believe that they're giving her a platform. I'm loving it that they are, but I just can't believe that they are because that's all they're doing right now is they're going to give her a platform and it's all going to be the spotlight's going to be on her and she's going to make it worth her time. It's going to be great.
Well, and people will say, "Oh, you don't know. The Republicans are smart. They're going to do this." All I have to say is, how did he do with Jack Smith? They were going to embarrass him or put him in a situation where he get caught. He sat there and played them the whole time. And the only difference between Jack Smith and Hillary Clinton is Jack Smith is still working. He's very he's very straightforward, a straight edge when it comes to the law. He didn't go out of bounds or whatever. He's only said what he had to say, and he kept it, you know, political and
Yes.
legitimate and all that stuff. Hillary don't need to do that. Hillary can go off the
No.
fucking reservation and just kick some ass.
Hillary can they can ask her about something and she can go down a different road because she once she gets talking it's going to be pretty hard to shut her up. And I'm glad you brought Jack Smith up because I'd like to see him as our next AG. I really doubt that would happen, but that's we need somebody of his caliber to start indicting people as soon as we get that orange bastard out of there.
Yeah, I keep people keep saying Jack Smith, and I don't think Jack Smith would be the AG, and here's why. Not that the Democrats wouldn't necessarily want him, but he was over in the Hague doing whatever he was doing. He
Yeah.
got caught up in all this bullshit. He got a lot of stuff just pretty much thrown away. He's probably tired of governmental shit at this point. He doesn't want to deal with it. Well, he went through what he went through, and now he wants to jump back in for another 4 years and go in it again and deal with that shit. I don't know that he'd want to do that. Why would he? I mean, there's not enough money in the job. I don't think he gives a fuck about the prestige. I mean, how much more prestigious do you need than being a prosecutor at The Hague?
Exactly, and I don't think he would be the next AG, but it'd be nice. It's nice to wish, and if we can have somebody of his caliber, and it's like he's like one of them pit bulls. He gets onto something, it's pretty hard to get him unlatched, and that's the caliber AG that we need in there in the next term.
Well, I think if you were going to pick an AG from the Democratic Party that's currently in politics, that would be a good choice. I think there's two options, or probably more than that, but the two that come to mind are Jamie Rashkin or Sheldon Whitehouse. These fuckers are pissed. They're fighters. They're constitutional lawyers, constitutional professors. They know their shit, and they've been through this mess. So they do have an axe to grind there. They know the crimes that have been committed already because they've been in the middle of it. And we need somebody like that who's going to be leading the charge and trying to get some accountability on all this shit.
How about or that other lady too? Is it Hoyer or Moyer? She used to be one of the pardon attorneys.
Oh yeah, yeah. You see her on
You know who
TikTok.
I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think her
Yeah.
name is Moyer or Hoyer. Yeah, if you see her on TikTok, yeah, she would be a good. There's probably a lot of good choices, but if I'm interviewing an attorney general, I'm going to ask the question: are you ready to go after these fuckers? Because we got to go after these fuckers. Government, the U.S. government is big on saying, "Nah, let's just heal and let it go." people are not going to be happy until there's accountability. The Pam Bondis, the Cash Patels, the Donald Trumps, all these people pay a price for the crimes they've committed over and over again. The idea that we want the country to heal and we'll just let it go, that's not going to work anymore. You're going to piss off this country if you don't go after these people and hold them accountable.
Yeah, exactly. We need, they pardoned Nixon. I don't think that'd work this time. We have to have accountability, and the corruption has ran so deep in this Donald Trump regime that if we don't if we don't get some convictions going down the road, I just don't think we'll ever have the trust in our government again.
Yeah, and I think, there have been periods of time in this country when we didn't trust our government, but I don't think there's a worse time than there is now. I mean, in the 60s, people didn't trust the government, and justifiably so. But I think it's worse now because, it's one thing people making bad decisions or not doing what the people in the country wanted to do. They didn't have trust because of that. But all this rampant crime and the lying and everything, it's just blatant. It's in our face. You can't hide the fact that it didn't happen. You can't say it didn't happen. It did. And people do want the accountability for that shit. They got to recognize that and they got to be ready to go after it.
Well, it's never been so blatant before, Mike, because we've never had media like we have now. You know, he can make regular news agencies bend to the knee, but all the social media people like you on here that are bringing out stuff, and there's a lot of creators, but and then we also get to see news as it's happening a lot more
Right.
than we ever used
Right.
to. But there's so many independent creators, you can't suppress them all, you know. And everybody's if you want to find out about things, you can find out about what's going on, you know.
Yeah, but you
So
got to be very discerning about it because you can't trust anything in mainstream media or the streaming media. And even out here on the internet, there are plenty of people giving misleading information or not giving you the whole story. So you really got to be looking into what it is and investigating it yourself. And that's why there are people out there that don't know really what's going on because they don't take the time. And I'm not saying everybody should take the time to do it. You got to live your life, you got to enjoy life. But we're at a very pivotal moment that if we don't focus and investigate and speak our minds, we may not get that opportunity down the road. So if for all those people that say, "Oh, I don't like the news, it's too depressing, I don't want to talk about it." Okay, that's why we are where we are now. If you want this to get worse, keep doing what you're doing. You need to step up and get in there and fight. This is an all hands on deck type thing. It's to that point. We've gotten there, and now there's really no option. You either fight or you give up.
yeah, you know, my wife brings up too that she thinks I'm too deep into this, but and I just tell her, I don't want to hand this world that we have right now over to my grandchildren. I want a better world, and
Yeah.
and we can still have a better world, but we do have to stand up for our rights, and we have to stand up for other people's rights. And that now is the time to make a stand against our government. Otherwise, we'll never have one that we can trust again.
Well, you could look at history, like all the hippies that protest against the war. You could have said about every one of those that they were too deep in it, they were too focused on it, but they were largely the reason why the Vietnam War ended. You could say that about many of the patriots, the true patriots back in the Revolutionary War. You're getting too deep into this, but without them getting too deep, we still be under the thumb of England. Same with the Civil War. You took a stand on something, and you're too worried about the slave thing. Just let it go. It's not that big a deal. But if not for those people that stood up and fought and got deep into it, we might still have slavery. So whenever anybody says to me, "You're thinking too much about this," No, I'm not thinking enough about it because I'm 65 years old. There's only so many things I can do. So I'm taking those things that I can do, like coming here and doing this and doing it to my best ability. Am I thinking too much about this stuff? Well, I'm also thinking about the ultimate demise of a country that we've all loved and wanted to thrive in. And if that's being taken away, am I really thinking too much about it? Am I too deep into it? I don't think so. I think we're at a point in this country that if we don't fight, we're fucked. And I understand how some people don't get it, maybe don't have the same kind of situation I have. That's why I do it, because there's a lot of people out there that don't have what you and I have, complete autonomy. There's going to be a boss, there's going to be a community, there's going to be family that tell you you can't do that, they're going to make your life difficult. We're at a point where we don't have those things over hanging over our heads. And I dare say, knowing you and knowing me, even if we did have those things hanging over our heads, we'd fucking do it anyway.
Oh yeah, I love our country. I love the country that I grew up in. I'll do whatever I have to take this country back. Is this something I want to be doing? No, I'd rather be focused on a lot of other things.
Oh
Then
yeah.
I can't wait until we get to the day where I don't have to be focused on politics because this was never my life before.
No,
So,
no, I agree. Prior to Donald Trump, I talked about politics. I had opinions about politics, but I wasn't thrown in the middle of it. I wasn't speaking out as much as I did because whatever I saw wasn't as ridiculously and blatantly damaging to this country. But as I got older, I got kids, I got grandkids, and now it's a much different scenario. I mean, I know if it was just me or just me and my wife, I know from 65 to whenever my end is, I can get through it. I'll be fine. But I'm not so sure about my kids or grandkids. And as a parent and as a grandparent, I have a responsibility to protect my kids and my grandkids. So if I don't do it, I'm just a lazy, worthless motherfucker that just took. If I don't fight back now, I'm exactly what millennials want us to believe, that that boomers are just selfish fucks that only care about themselves. Well, that may be the case with some boomers because we know some boomers that are fucked up, but that's not my mindset. I know my time is more limited than my kids and my grandkids. And if I can do anything to ensure a better life for them, it's my responsibility to do it. And any parent or grandparent should feel that way. We know a lot of parents and grandparents don't. My kid's 18, get the fuck on the street, go live on your own and do what you got to do. My wife and I didn't do that. We'll help our kids no matter how old they are. That's just what families do. But there are a lot of people that say, get out there, earn your shit, and I'm just going to put my arms around my pile of money and hope to God nobody steals it from me. But if they do, I'm going to bite you because it's all about me. And that's the problem with this world. There's too much selfishness, too much self centeredness, and not enough worry about other people. It's one thing if you're talking about people you don't know, but for fuck's sake, this is your family. If you can't lend a hand to your family, as far as I'm concerned, you're fucking worthless.
and that's why I'm doing it, and I've said this many times before, and you know it too, but I put it out there because all my grandkids are brown. And I'd like to go back and tell that story about this hat real quick that I told you before we came on air.
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
got this grandson, and just a little bit of history. He's uh, 11, 12 years old. Anyway, all my grandkids do sports, and we were there on a Friday night, and we came home Saturday morning, and they all went different places to do sports. But on Friday night, when we were there, we went to the complex and did that. Saturday morning, ICE raided that complex,
Oh, wow.
and all my grandkids are brown. They weren't there that morning. Thank God for that. But now they're scared to go there. And anyway, he follows me on my TikToks, and he seen me. I was doing TikToks, and I got this hat on, and he asked his dad, my son-in-law, he says, "How come Grandpa's wearing that goofy hat?" So my son-in-law brought the pictures up of Liam Ramos, and he was wearing this hat, that 5-year-old that got detained. And I guess my grandson looked at my son-in-law and he goes, "Dad, that's so powerful." And even if we don't win this, Mike, I know my grandkids will always know that their grandpa was in there for the fight, and I just didn't stand on the sideline.
Right,
So
exactly.
that's why I'm in here for my grandkids. Exactly.
I will say this in pushback to you. You said, even if we don't win this fight, Howard, we're going to win the fight. And I don't ever want to hear anybody say any different, because if you have that attitude, if you think there's any possibility that we lose this fight, you become not much help in the process. We're going to win this fight. I mean, you know as well as I do, we've gone through tough times in this country. You've gone through tough times in your life. I'll bet, when you were going through your troubled periods, you were thinking to yourself, fuck, my life is over pretty much. And I don't know how I'll ever be able to fix that. Yet here we are in our 60s and we're doing all right. You'll always get through it. You got to push through it. It's just a matter of how quickly and how you respond to it. And by giving an inch, that's the wrong way to do it. We don't give a fucking inch. We keep fighting. And even if I'm on the ground and they're pounding on me, I'm going to kick them in the nuts if I can. But that's not going to
Yeah.
happen. We're winning already. And I don't see any other way out but that we're going to beat these fuckers. They're killing themselves.
Yeah, and I have to agree with that. And I maybe I said it the wrong way because I feel that yeah, we're going to get this country back. But I didn't think it would be this exhausting of a fight. I figured by now the Republicans would have stepped in and taken that orange son of a bitch out of office. But at this point, I don't know. That's not going to happen. We
No,
we need that to happen.
and I wasn't
So
trying to call you out on that. I was just trying to
no,
correct you
no,
because I know you better than that. If you thought
yeah,
that there was no chance, you wouldn't be standing in the cold protesting at your advanced age. You wouldn't be doing the things that you're doing if you thought there was any chance that we were going to lose this. I said that because I don't want anybody else saying that. Don't say we're going to lose or we might not win.
yeah.
That's not an option. Winning or losing is not an option at this point. So I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want anybody to talk about it. I know you were just making an example.
Yeah.
Even if we do lose, at least I tried. Yeah, I maybe have said that too. But at this stage of the game, we can't even voice the possibility of losing because we're not going to fucking lose.
Exactly. Keep on fighting, keep on fighting. I forget how long ago this was, but I actually went to the what did they call that? The Democratic
Convention.
deal convention, yeah, and I actually got elected to a position. I don't know what it's got to do with what, but I'm going to find out here in March. But at my age, Mike, I never thought I'd have to be fucking protesting, and I didn't think I'd have to be active in our government, and I never have been before. And here I am. This ain't what I seen for my
Exactly.
older years, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Well, and Howard, you can cry about being old, but people need to know you're still younger than me. I'm the old motherfucker here, and there's got to be some fight left in us because we've dealt with it our whole lives, and now the time has come that pugilistic men step up and start throwing some fucking punches. So, and women for that matter too. We're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. We're at that point, and when you get two old men talking for an hour and a half, things start to degrade and bladders start to fill. So, we're going to wrap things up.
I'm on TikTok
Yeah, tell people where they
under
can find
Howard
you.
Paulson. Yep. Just my name, Howard Paulson. Type it in. My page should come up. Do a lot of political, some stuff just around here of what we do for work too. But yeah, I go out and protest. If you want to follow a little bit of that, you can follow that through TikTok. So
Absolutely. Check out Howard Paulson. You'll see him on our lives from time to time. You'll see him on this show from time to time. And of course, his TikToks. He's well worth the listen, as you found out now that you've listened to him on this podcast. For those listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do it. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.